Hey, welcome to Money Mindsets Matter. I'm Chad Craig, and remember, if money doesn't matter, then what's the matter? If you're not preparing, you're not prepared. This is season 2, episode 9, and if you've been with us on this journey, we concluded episode 8 in a part 1 and part 2, and episode 8 in season 2, part 2 was when and why to expand your banking system. And again, we've been talking about my journey and with the infinite banking concept and how to utilize ECV, early cash value, high early cash value, dividend paying, whole life contract with the mutual company that's dividend paying. And so in my journey, it's not just learning, it's what I've already done. And of course, now I own my own insurance agency, and it's my joy to be able to serve people just like you, and solving problems that we all face and incur when it comes to life and money. Now, some of us still are unaware of the problems, and we hope that episodes like this will expose areas that you need to think about. I'm reminded of what R. Nelson Nash said in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker. But basically, he says when you know the problem, or if you know what's happening, then you know what to do. Well, you have to know the problem in order to know the solution. And so in this episode, we're going to talk about solving problems and how, especially design an ECV, a high early cash value life insurance contract with the mutual company that pays dividends, solves problems, plural. Plural. The power of this asset and why so many, when they learn of it, begin to utilize it in their own life or for their family or for their business, for nonprofit. I'm an overseer of a local church, a church planner for churches, is because there is no other asset or product that solves so many problems simultaneously. See, when you purchase a dividend paying whole life contract with the mutual company, okay, that's designed specially for high early cash value, all right? When you purchase that contract and you put that first premium payment in, those dollars or that dollar purchases multiple solutions that you and I all face. Meaning that dollar contractually purchases and accomplishes multiple objectives and goals simultaneously, okay? And that's the power of it, because these are issues we all face. And so we're going to talk about how it solves problems and how the infinite banking concept solves these problems. You know, the first problem, the basic level of what it solves, is you need a place to store your cash. So I'm going to put on the board, I want to welcome those as well listening on podcast. I'll do my best to always speak to what I'm illustrating for those that's watching on YouTube. If you've not already followed, to give a like, we appreciate it. That way you'll be notified as we release new episodes. But the first problem we're all face is where to store our cash. Now, some of you are already answering that problem. For some of you, you're just storing it in a checking account, an institutional bank, or you're storing cash in a savings account, or some of you might be storing in CDs, certificate of deposits at a bank or credit union. Some of you could be, hopefully not, but storing cash under your mattress, the old way. And I heard a story once of someone went to deposit a decent amount of cash to the bank, and the bills had a unique smell to it. And the person just couldn't help but ask. It's like, what's where this is? And to come to find out, the person had put that money in a tin can and had buried it somewhere and had went and dug it up to get it in the bank for what this purchase they had. So I don't know. The point is that we've all faced this issue of where do you store cash, and some have sought to solve it in different ways. But it's a problem you and I face, okay, that once cash comes in, there has to be some container, some vehicle that stores it, okay? Now, if you store enough of it, or if you're a high owner or a business owner, then the issue is if you're storing an institutional bank, the FDIC protection is up to $250K, okay? $250K per deposit. That's the limit. So at some point, if you were fine storing your money just in an institutional bank and a savings vehicle, and you get over 250, well, now you're taking on an additional problem, okay, of you have some liability now, and you got some more risk, okay, because that money's not protected or federally insured, all right? So it's something to be aware of. The second thing we need, though, is we don't just want to solve the problem of storing cash. We also then have the problem of we still need cash, meaning we still need access to the cash. So for instance, if up here, if you're storing cash in a CD and you need the cash, yeah, the cash is stored in the CD, but if that's, let's say, a 2-year CD and you need it in 8 months after you put it in, you have a problem that can't be solved by that vehicle. You don't have access to that cash when a need arises or an opportunity. See, you need access to the cash. In fact, I know of a story of someone who owns a large tract of land and many acres. And the story of how the owner began to acquire that land is the person who owned it was a gambler. And the person who owns it now got a call late one night. And the gambler who owned the land, and there was a little homestead and a house on it, said, "Hey, I'm in need of money." And the person who owns it now replied and said, "Okay, well, when the bank opens tomorrow or whatnot, they agreed on a price." He said, "No problem. I'll buy the land and the home from you." And the guy who was the gambler who had called said, "No, you don't understand. I need the money right now. And this price for this land is now. If you'll give me cash now, then you can have it." And thankfully, that person had access to some cash on hand, got in their vehicle, immediately took it down, and the guy gave him the deed of the land and all that was on the land. And so that is a true story, and happened many years ago of someone I know. But the point is what if an opportunity happened like that to you? Wonder if it's a vehicle. You've been believing for a vehicle and someone needs instant cash, or it could be a simple story if you're young and need a laptop or need some equipment for your business, and it opens up. So we have the problem of we got to solve where we store our cash, but many of the places that you are using, or is the common consensus to store it, doesn't also deal with the next problem we all have, and that's access to the cash. Okay, because we're going to need access to the cash. Now, This brings up the third. So someone says, well, if my money was in savings account and that story or a story or opportunity like that arises for me, I just go and get the money out and go purchase or take advantage of that opportunity. Okay? So you think that you've solved the access to cash problem. But are you aware of the other problem we need to solve? Is you need a place that stores cash, gives you access to cash, that when you access the cash, you still have uninterrupted compounding growth. See, that's the next problem that we face. Is that's great if you stored your cash in a place and you could right now be very happy and be like, man, you know, I'm getting some rate of return, which by the way, I just looked. A lot of times, you know, people think they've solved the problems and like, well, my money is in a money market and I'm getting a good rate of return. Well, the top money market currently is 4% in our nation, 4%. And when you look at the terms of those things, it's going to be limited. Sometimes it's to get your money in, okay? And that's why it's going to be a bank you've not probably ever heard of or a credit union. And that rate is a temporary fixed rate. Could be a year, could be 3 months, 6 months. And then once you get back busy in life, forget about it, it's going to drop drastically. The point is your money market rate is not a fixed, consistent rate, okay? So if you're trying to then plan long-term with business math and how numbers of money actually work, you're running numbers that are not guaranteed, numbers that you can't control. You don't really know the outcome, okay? So you can't make the necessary preparation needed because these rates are constantly changing. In fact, right today, as the day of filming, the national average for a high yield money market account is 0.61%. 0.61%. 0.61%. I'm talking about an asset where you can store cash that destroys that rate, still provides access to the cash that you've stored, the value of that cash, and when you access the cash, you don't stop the compounding growth, meaning that percent doesn't change. You have a fixed, guaranteed, contractually rate of growth that is never interrupted. And so the growth continues to compound on top of the previous year's interest, and it continues to grow uninterrupted, okay? So a lot of these other vehicles that the average or below average person when it comes to financial wisdom and habits and money mindsets, where they're storing cash, doesn't give you uninterrupted compounding growth, okay? So that's a problem that the asset we're talking about, all right, does solve, because you contractually have a guaranteed fixed rate of interest, okay, that never stops that rate of growth, even when you access the value of that cash, okay? Then, as I mentioned, not only do you have the problem of how to get uninterrupted compounding growth, where you don't stop the growth when you access the cash. So this is what, when you think long term, and remember, he who's not preparing is not prepared. When you think about what culturally we call retirement years, a lot of people miss this fact that they're throwing money first into a place they're storing like a 401k, okay? And for years, it's basically a money prison because their access to the cash is limited, okay, by penalties, or access to the cash creates taxable events. The asset we're talking about and the power of it gives you access to cash, okay, without it being a taxable event. Okay, so you have another benefit there than the 401k. But another issue on the 401k is if you were to have $100,000 in the 401k and you need access to it and you're willing to take the penalties or whatever, and let's say you take out $25,000 and you use the money, well, guess what's happened? You've interrupted the compounding growth that the normal financial advisor always puts before the client, that, hey, if you'll just start chunking away or putting in monthly money into your 401k, they show you, well, look at the trajectory of how that money's going to grow over 30 years, or when you get to what culturally we call retirement years. Well, the problem is that once you access that money, then you have interrupted compounding growth, okay? And this is why average rate of return can be misleading, and we've maybe talked about that before, but if not, we will, because if you have, money and you put 100,000 in, all right, but it has 50% drawdown, so your 100,000 drops down to 50K, that's 50% loss. Okay. Well, then, for it to get back to 100K, you need 100% gain to get back to 100. 50,000 plus 100% gains gets you 100K. Well, that's, say, year 2. This was year 1. You had a drawdown. And what's the average then? What's the average rate of return for those 2 years? So if year 1, we had negative 50%, but year 2, we had a plus 100%, okay? Then the average rate of return for this little illustration is 100% minus 50% is 50%. So someone say, oh, 50%. Well, it's 50% divided by 2 years, right? 2 years. So we got a 25%, they'd say, average rate of return. But how much is in your account? 100K. See, the average rate of return don't always tell the full story, because in this scenario of 2 years, you just got back to the amount you put in. So the average rate of return was 25%, but you don't have any more money. And there's been 2 years. So now you also got the issue with lost opportunity cost, right, as well. So this is something that, listen, when we talk about these other vehicles, you have to be made aware of those scenarios and those possibilities. The asset we're talking about removes that scenario. Why? Because we not only have uninterrupted compounding growth, but we have the answer for the problem of we need guaranteed rate of growth. That's the power of this asset. It's a problem we all face. Is that we need at least some asset in our portfolio that answers the problem of how do we get guaranteed rate of growth. The only way I can plan now and have guarantees for the future is if my planning now is built on something contractually that provides guaranteed rate of growth. Everything else and all other vehicles and scenarios, even in our portfolio, are hypotheticals. It's, well, based on this value set of numbers in the past, we can forecast this possibly will happen in the future. And what does every financial advisor have to tell you, right, at that point, if they don't want to get in trouble? Past performance does not guarantee future performance. Well, the asset we're talking about, why it's so powerful, is this does guarantee a rate of growth. So it answers where we store cash. It answers where we store cash, but also still have access to the cash, the value of it. It also answers when we access the cash, the problem of we don't want to interrupt the compounding growth. Well, this is uninterrupted compounding growth. Then, in planning for the future, because if we're not preparing, we're not going to be prepared then for the future, is this solves the problem of, all right, I have a guaranteed rate of growth that when I run scenarios and run the business financial math, I'm dealing with a number that within my overall plan and goal and portfolio is guaranteed. Is guaranteed. And that's powerful. See, that deals with the emotive problems that we have that I'm not even really focused on bringing up. Like, what about some peace of mind? Because that's what guarantees provide. And you can go do the research. I've looked at it and done it. But go look at when a drawdown happens, like the GFC, global financial crisis. Go look at a Great Depression drawdown. And if you're depending on just the 401k nest egg, okay, and you're going to follow the 4% rule, which is highly unlikely to actually work in the days we live in anyway. But let's say you're going to do it, and you're going to just draw down pull out 4% of your 401k portfolio in your cultural retirement years. If a drawdown happens in a year of your retirement, like the GFC or dot-com bubble or Great Depression, that whole 4% rule in the plan is broken at that point. Because the amount to get your account all the way up to where it was to sustain that projected 4% is going to be too excessive in the possibility of actual gains within that short time window you have. So this again brings some emotive problems of peace of mind. That at least I know a guaranteed rate of growth that then I can build other vehicles or in my portfolio or financial decisions that maybe involve some risk. Okay? Peace of mind. Some of you don't want that at all. And there's ways that we can serve you where we can add an additional asset outside of these high early cash value life insurance contracts with the mutual company. But there's another asset that can be coupled with this one that's similar that can give you even more long-term peace of mind and guarantee payouts. Okay, so there's options like that. But right now we're looking at these common problems that we have, that we need to be aware of, and we need to find an answer to, and the power of this asset we're talking about solves it and answers. Okay? Guess what the next one is? You not only need a guaranteed rate of growth and all these other problems to be solved, but you also need OPM, other people's money. Meaning, you need additional capital. Now, some of the grossest misstatements that I've seen from the personalities in the financial world and through social media and their content comes around this part here. of how they misrepresent. Sometimes there's no other way really to look at it, deliberately and sometimes not deliberately, that this asset we're talking about answers the problem of you and I need additional capital, meaning we need other people's money to achieve the outcomes we desire personally, for our family, for our business, for our nonprofit, for our church, for our ministries, okay, for our lineage. We need additional capital. And this asset guarantees that at points early on, pretty early, you're going to get access to additional capital. Okay? Meaning, even on a cash-on-cash return, benefit, where year 4, sometimes year 3, year 4, you put $1 in the asset and you're going to get more of $1 to utilize, to capitalize. You're going to put $1 in and you're going to get more than $1 that's liquid, ready to be deployed. Okay? The cash-on-cash return is outstanding. Gets better every year. And every year that means you get access to OPM, other people's money, additional capital. Now, we talked about it in the last episode, and we've talked about it repeatedly, but the OPM is because this asset contractually gives you contractually guaranteed access to the mutuals company general pool of money. Okay? And the companies we use are over 100 years, and for over 100 years has also paid dividends. And so we are becoming part owner, okay, and partnering with the strength and the know-how, the longevity, the track record, and the resources of some of the most powerful and financial responsible and strong companies on the planet. Okay? And so we get OPM. We get a contractual right to utilize that liquidity pool, because when this asset makes us part owner, because the mutual company does not have stockholders, which is why this guaranteed rate of growth is higher, especially long term. Okay? The consistent rate long term is higher than any of these type of vehicles when you take the average money market, the average of what they pay out. Okay? So we need more capital than we have current access to. And this solves the problem. Why? Well, it's another thing that Nelson said. Basically, how I summarize it, your need for capital is always greater than your current access to it. Like, think about your business. When I talk with business owners and business owners who are clients or potential clients of mine, they're always dealing with the issue of access to capital and liquidity. They have new projects they want to take on, new marketing endeavors, new employees they want to hire, new objectives, and it comes down to OPM. That's a problem. This is why most business owners begin to readily and quickly add this asset into their life, into their daily money mindset and habits, is because they understand the need for this. And when they learn about this, so many don't know, they add that. All right. Now, the power of the OPM additional capital is now you can use other people's money, additional capital, to go purchase more money. because you can use the OPM to go purchase other cash producing assets. You could go, like I talked about last episode, expanding your system. You can use cash here to go purchase additional assets that come with guarantees. Okay, so you can go purchase more dollars through cash flowing assets. All right, so these are problems that this one asset solves. Think about that. Think of the benefit. How many other options can you think of that answers these problems we all have, whether we realize it or not, and provide solution to it? There's none. There is no other asset like a high early cash value, specially designed life insurance contract with a mutual company that is dividend paying. No other. It solves multiple issues. Now, it might not always solve it the way we want, right? Like people talk about a guaranteed rate of growth. Well, they say, well, I had this business deal, or I bought this land, flipped it, and, my cash on cash return, or, my net rate of growth on that was way beyond what this asset guarantees. True. But are you guaranteed to do that deal every year? I haven't found the person. In fact, even the top people in different fields of real estate, you go, listen, what has happened at times is they've had bad deals, that they've at times lost millions within their overall portfolio. So I'm not saying to do that, but we have to, again, sort of do our best to compare apples to apples and see the whole picture, and to have a balanced view, a healthy money mindset. And why it matters is because that's great if someone can show one time, I had a 4X on my investment. But are you guaranteed to do that from now all the way until your cultural retirement years? No. So why would we not want then in our portfolio and in our risk-taking endeavors, if we have some, okay, which even a savings account with more than $250 in it is a risk-taking endeavor, because you're moving outside of liability protection of the government, okay? Why would you not want to put some foundational guarantees there? Well, when you see the problems and you acknowledge the problems, you see we got a solution, okay, to it. And if it's not to the level we want it, listen, all you got to do is change one thing. You can still do that land flipping illustration that I just mentioned, but if you do it with this asset in place, then your return is going to be greater. Your peace of mind is going to be greater. You can still accomplish that, but you have a foundation of these guarantees as you move forward with the other things that you cannot control. And we've talked about before, but type it in. Average S&P return, 9 to 10% over the last 100 years. It'll tell you that right there. And that's before taxes. That's before your advisor fees. Okay? So you got to see the picture. But one thing about this asset is it solves these problems we have. Okay? And then it becomes foundational to look at other opportunities of how to deploy or what to do with our money. All right? So I hope this reminds you of how we want to fully see the picture, because oftentimes, what is constantly parroted and what is so becoming a stumbling block to so many is the phrase, buy term and invest the rest. Buy term and invest the rest. You know, I looked just this week, and you know what the research says? The research says that strategy fails. It fails. The strategy and the saying, and buy term and invest the rest, fails. And the reason it fails is because it does not answer some of these problems. And one of the things that happens is most people who even say, or buy into, buy term and invest the rest, they're not investing the rest. They're not investing the rest. So think of their issue. They're trying to solve the problem of protection. Through the term insurance. If you're 35 years old, you're only going to get term. If you're good rated, you're only going to be able to get 30-year term out to 65. After that point, it's going to be too expensive. You're not going to be able to afford it. It wouldn't make no sense to do it at that point. Okay? So they're getting term for the problem they're trying to solve, protection, but have they really solved it? Because they've only temporarily solved it. So it's not really solved. It's just actually pushed into the future. Pushed into the future. And based on the term you get, if you don't have guaranteed insurability and something happens within the term, then you're not going to be insurable at that point. So now the problem you thought you were solved is no longer solved. You have no protection. Okay? And most people do this because they're trying to protect the value of the income of whoever's working in the home to then be a form of protection for the home. It's probably mortgaged to the brim, okay? And maybe some cars that have loans. And then we're chunking the rest into a 401k or some qualified or non-qualified plan, which, by the way, has no guarantees. No guarantees. So this is not solving some of our problems. It's pushing what's going to happen into the future, but it's not built on guarantees. So it's not actually solved the issue of risk and the issue of uninterrupted compounding growth and a guaranteed rate. Okay? Because this one, by the way, does solve the problem. Because you have, in this scenario, you have guaranteed for life protection and guaranteed payout, which is a multiplier of money. So that payout is going to be a multiplied amount than what you have paid into it. Okay? Guaranteed. This might do that, might not. Except if it does that, when the money comes out of this, guess what's happening? Taxes. Now let me ask you something. You think taxes are going to be greater in the future, or they're greater today? Well, if you know anything about what's going on in our country and the liabilities of our country and finances, the need for more tax revenue is greater every day. So taxes, the probability of taxes being greater in the future is higher than even the taxes today. But let's say your tax bracket is 28%. Well, you run the math. When that money comes out, when this money comes out here, it goes tax-free to the beneficiaries or beneficiary. So, this doesn't work in solving the problems we're all facing in many ways. One, most people's not even doing it. They're not investing the rest. And here's the thing. If right now you are investing the rest, okay, and it's going in, but you have an emergency, people say, well, I got an emergency fund. Well, guess what? That emergency fund doesn't have a guaranteed rate of growth. Number one, that's higher than this one. Secondly, when you pull money out of your emergency fund, you interrupt the compounding growth or any growth it had. Or, not emergency, let's say you found an opportunity. You pull money out for an opportunity, guess what happens? Same thing. You have just interrupted compounding growth. And your basis amount that's getting growth, it just went down as well. Which means if you were projecting certain future values, those values instantly change. Guess what this solves? That. Because any money you access does not interrupt the compounding growth because you're getting still interest and dividends on the full amount. The full amount of the cash value while you're still deploying it and using it. So these are things to consider. This is why and by the way, on term, 99%, close to it, 98, 99, is never paid out. Okay? Which means that money is forever lost. And it's not really solving the problem in reality and what actually happens. So it is a false solution, and that's why right there, ChatGPT, type in. Does invest, buy term and invest the rest? Does it work? And look at the stats. Look at it. Okay? So, think of the problems, see how this asset solves it, and then if you want to talk about further, how do we get higher rates of return? Things like that. Well, that's what, after we have here, OPM, and we deploy money to go purchase more money or cash flowing assets, that's where we start dealing with those conversations. But this solves these problems we all face. Well, this is Money Mindsets Matter. And I am Chad Craig. And remember, if money doesn't matter, then what's the matter? If you're not preparing, you're not prepared. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. God bless you.